event of massive capital destruction caused by his firm. And precisely around like $40 billion, or I guess, I think it was almost 50 also at its highest, right?
50, right? $50 billion.
Yeah, 50 billion, right? Dollars just poof, gone in a matter of, let's say, less than a week.
How much is that in Korean? This is probably too big to even think about, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's too many zeros.
Yeah. Just use dollars. Yeah. Hyun Joon, or Andre, as we'll be calling you today, we're going to talk a lot about some difficult stuff, cryptocurrency, NFTs, things which I have very little information about, and that's why you're here to talk to us about it in Korea. But before we do that, I want to try to start with some of the humans inside this subject. So, for example, if I look at people inside of baseball, in football, K-pop, opera, all that stuff, although there are certain individuals, there's always a general demographic involved to those things. There is a kind of average football fan, an average opera fan. So when we think about Korean cryptocurrency, that Korean crypto world, is it basically a bunch of young dudes in their 20s? Is it different? What kind of community are we talking about here, Andre?
Yeah, you're not really terribly wrong about this. It's a lot of young people in the 20s. I think in the South Korean population, like we look at just the demographics of the amount of people that are actually using or investing in crypto, right? And if you look, it's around 13% of the Korean population, with like 20% of adults, and 1/3 of adults that are just working, that have jobs, have already invested in crypto. And that's really a really big amount, and it's definitely going over this bull market that we have. But it's just people realizing that it's highly unlikely for them to become rich out of just income. So they find a source of income through investment, right? Like stocks generally, or real estate, and sometimes crypto, right? But your regard about just being 20-year-olds, you're absolutely right. It's 20-year-olds. Some might consider themselves as degenerate gamblers. Some might be in their early 30s, and yeah, it's usually the line of adoption for technology in itself. It's around that area. I feel like it's just around that post-university or around university, because there's limits to how young people can actually use crypto, because, I mean, they don't have money, right?
Right.
But if you look at the line of adoption for, let's say, even like social media, right? It's usually quite young, and then it progresses to being older. And it definitely seems that the concentration seems to be around like 25 to 35 years old. Yeah.
Why do you think the people that age around university, these like 이공 삼공 세대, these 20s, 30s people, why do you think it's them that are into it? So you mentioned this idea of, they want ways to earn money, and the current system might not be providing that. But is it because it's new technology that young people are in it? They're like early adapters. Is it because you need to have loads of technical skills and be computer savvy? Or is it just like a trend among those people?
Well, it's definitely a little bit of everything, right? Like you just said. It definitely seems like there's really quite a trend. Whenever like Bitcoin price goes up, a lot of Koreans just FOMO into buying. And when people do that, they usually tell their friends, and there's always a story about, this guy that I know, this friend of a friend has become a billionaire now just by trading crypto or by investing in this and that. And then there's always that kind of like conversation, and especially in people that are like young employees, right? They've just graduated and they've gone to the job market. If you look at most of the topics that people are talking about while they're smoking cigarettes in between work, they're really talking about, what stock do I buy? What crypto do I buy? What how's the market, and those kind of stuff. Well, at least that's been my experience working at a crypto firm, But it definitely seems like there's a barrier to actually understanding this. People actually have to put their time into this, and there's the trend that is also influencing it. And the more savvy people actually understand the tech, but I would say that unfortunately, the majority actually don't understand the tech, right?
So it's just getting into it through stories, word of mouth, rumors,
Yeah.
trends. I mean, Korea is a pretty trend-oriented society. Every
Yeah.
society has trends, but when there's a trend in Korea, whether it's long padding, crop top, under boob, truss, like people get
Yeah.
into that stuff hard. Do you think that plays a role? Like, how does that trend aspect? And like, if you're a serious crypto bro, do you get annoyed by the people getting into it just for trends? Because you're like, no, this is serious, man.
No, it definitely seems like it's more of the trend, and I don't really get annoyed by the people that are coming in just because of trend, because a lot of them start out like that, right? And they
Mm,
come seeking profits, but then they stay later. Uh, if you stay for a long enough time, you stay in there for the technology, for the innovation, for the things that are actually developing, that are providing value to this world, right?
mm,
It's really not, I mean, trends in itself, right? Come and go.
yeah.
But if you're someone that has stayed here for a long time, then definitely seems that you're more about the core innovations. You know, the way that it's helped society instead
Mm.
of just let's make a quick buck. I don't know, buying Bitcoin or Ethereum or something like that, right?
Sure, sure. Let's get into some of those innovations and how you think it might be helping society soon. But before that, like Andre, how did you get involved in the scene? Because I mean, you were at Hanyang University. That's a pretty good place. It's one of the top universities in the country, and you might think from there people go to various positions. But you were working at a crypto firm. Like, what's your trajectory into that world?
Yeah, so I first started getting involved in crypto just like everyone else, just like we talked about it, during the trend of 2017.
Mm,
There was a massive bull rally, right? And that was the time that I actually got involved first. And at the time, you know, I saw a price difference of 50% between Bitcoin abroad and Bitcoin in Korean exchanges, right? This is called the Kimchi Premium. You know, Koreans pay a premium because a lot of them FOMO in, like they have fear of missing out, and they
mm,
just buy a lot of crypto. And the supply is so low that the the Koreans, you know, they pay a premium for this, right? And at the time they were paying a 50% premium, and what I did was basically profit off of that difference, and that's how I first got involved into crypto. And I did this with this friend from high school, actually, just uh, sending over, buying Bitcoin abroad, sending it to Korea, sending it back to my friend, and
mm,
continuing the cycle. But over time, you know, I've definitely had breaks in between, you know, when the market's really low, because there's not a lot of interesting things, but I've been always keeping an eye on this and sometimes even investing during this time, right? But I also started getting more involved into it in 2000, at the end of 2020,
mm,
quite a bit more in 2020, and I saw that there was opportunities of buying like certain coins that I thought that were going to be bullish, right? And over then, you know, what happened was there was again Kimchi Premium started happening again because a lot of Koreans just massively started putting their money into crypto, and they were paying a premium. So started doing arbitraging. This thing is called arbitraging,
mm.
and at the time there was the peak, I think it was 22% difference, right? But this Kimchi Premium though, like I think it ultimately stems from the like trading limitations that are unique to the countries like exchanges, and the basically there's a lot of like domestic capital controls, and the inability also, like foreigners are not able to trade in Korean platforms, right? These are kind of like regulations that maybe we need to look over again, you know. And unfortunately, you know, because of these regulations, Koreans pay a premium about this.
Mm.
But after doing this Kimchi Premium arbitraging, then I graduated. That right before graduating, I actually got a job at a crypto firm at a VC and incubation startup accelerator called
Mm.
Mainblock, and I have been working ever since. So we basically help little projects that don't really have a Web3 or blockchain strategy, and develop that strategy for them, help them with their ICO, IDO, which means like initial coin offering. It's the equivalent of IPO in the stock world,
Mm.
or IDO, which is initial DEX offering, you know. and we help them through that to basically grow a lot faster and like help them with the learning curve, right? And after working for this company, I've realized that this is really what I want to do. Like, I want to pursue this a lot more in the coming years. But that's basically been my trajectory and my history of like how I've been started in crypto.
There's a couple of things here, Andre, that I need to try to unpack. So you mentioned some like 2017 bull market period. I don't know what that is. So like you mentioned it like it was the 2002 World Cup, or it was like,
Oh, no.
but so there was what was this 2017? So I want to talk about that and then this Kimchi Premium to make sure I understand it. What was that time? What was that time you were describing there?
So like Bitcoin in itself, or the crypto market in itself, moves in cycles, and the cycles peak at certain years, right? So if I'm not mistaken, I think it peaked in 2013. It peaked in 2015 again. It peaked in 2017, 18, right in like December. And right now, you could say that it has peaked in 2021 in March, and it's done another, I don't know if it consider peak, but it went up to an all-time high. You know, the price of Bitcoin went to the highest point it's ever been historically, right? And during those cycles, you know, during those like all-time high periods, there's really a lot of Koreans that rush in to buy at the worst time possible.
They buy when it's high. That doesn't make sense, does it?
It doesn't make sense, but there's always this Kimchi Premium that holds because there's a lot of Koreans that are rushing into the market to buy, and they inflate the prices, and the supply of the coins in Korean exchanges is so low that just the price goes up on Korean exchanges, while it's still 20 to, I don't know, less than 20% cheaper in other exchanges, in global exchanges. So that's basically what the Kimchi Premium is, you know, because unfortunately the trading cycle, the trading patterns of Koreans seems to be a lot more involved into rushing into the market when it's gaining interest at the highest, then it kind of dies down, right?
Well, I think that works with all the other trends, whether it's long padding or all the things we said, the white trousers this summer. But when it's stocks, that's a bit different. Before I go to the Kimchi Premium, one more question about this. How high is high? So like when Bitcoin's at its highest and when it's high, how much is a Bitcoin worth in monetary terms? Like what?
Okay, so Bitcoin historically, let's say when I was in 2017 at its peak, it reached $18,000. And in the Korean exchanges, it reached $25,000, right?
For one Bitcoin.
Yeah, one Bitcoin for the same Bitcoin, you know that. But in this current cycle, I think it, if I'm not mistaken, it reached first in March 50 something, you know, $57,000, and later on it went on to be going up to like 60 something thousand, $63,000, right?
So with this Kimchi Premium, at the time when you get into it, if you want to buy Bitcoin anywhere in the world, it's this price. But if you want to buy it in Korea, it's more expensive.
Yes.
And so what you were doing is you were buying it from the other part of the world, and then selling it in Korea for the higher price.
Yeah. So that's basically
it's very clever.
You know, very simply, you know.
How do you need like a VPN or a foreign citizenship to buy it from other parts? Or it might be a stupid question, but like, how does that work? Because in Korea, foreigners can't buy it.
Yeah, so in Korea, it's blocked for Korean exchanges are blocked for foreigners, unfortunately. But what you can do is basically what I did at the time in 2017 was contact my friend that was also my closest friend that was in Mexico, and we basically ran this together, you know, and process this. The name of the game is basically how do you cycle money the fastest way possible, you know, so that you can receive it, send it, receive it, send it, receive it, send it, constantly run that. And ideally, you could do it with code. I didn't have the coding background to actually automate this, but yeah, so that's how I did it. And there's several ways that you can also do it, right? But yeah, that's the name of the game, you know. Yeah, you're saying?
Where does the Kimchi Premium come from? So if in Korea it's more expensive and foreigners can't do it, that sounds like it's a closed market, like something's been set up, like there's a structure in place. So who has established this Kimchi Premium? Where does it come from? Is it like people like you that have established it so you can profit off it? Or is it coming from the government or from the banks? Where does that system come from?
Well, it ultimately stems from the trading limitations, the regulations that come, you know. So for example, in Korea, in the Korean exchanges, you couldn't buy USDT, the stable coin that is supposed to represent US dollars.
Okay.
You couldn't buy it at the same price that a US dollar is worth, right? So just because the Korean government does not really want to allow a massive outflow of capital, there's a lot of like domestic capital controls for this, you know. And within this, to try to protect itself and try to like basically make people pay for foreign exchange services, you know, these kind of things, they've created this premium that happens at the peak of cycles, right? So that's basically where it stems from. It's really stemming from the regulations that I think they do have positives, right? Like the massive outflow of capital, but in these certain like months, you know, where crypto market is really bullish, it really hurts the consumer because they're buying at a premium, and then that premium goes away. So then they bought 50% higher. Now maybe the price of Bitcoin stayed the same, but now they have 50% less, you know.
It hurts those people, but I guess it benefited you. Just before we move on to the next question, you don't have to answer this, but like during that where you were buying at 17,000 or selling at 25, you were doing that Kimchi Premium thing with your friend in Mexico. Was it enough to like give you a nice summer? Was it enough to change your life? Like, was it just buy dinner or what? You don't have to answer. I'm just kind of curious what kind of things we're talking about here. Is a rough ballpark.
Yeah, so for me at the time, it was quite a bit. I think I've been using that fund for like probably a year of university. You know, I didn't pay a lot of tuition because I had scholarships, right? National scholarships, but it definitely helped me with just my, like in a sense, pocket money, what I see it now. But at the time I felt like a lot of money, you know, for a young person, right? But during this time of 2021, you know, I think I've processed around like quite a bit of money, so that it's a substantial amount of money for what I would consider. I more than that information, I don't know if I
no, that's important. I just wanted to get some kind of idea, but you know, for young people going through university, it's not easy. The employment stuff is not easy, and there's so much focus on study, so anything that helps you get through that is a cool thing. If we look at this idea, I want to ask about like crypto and digital wallets and memes and like the community, because how like people of your generation, I've never asked my students at the university this. Like I've never asked who has a crypto wallet. I don't even know if that's the right question, but are there certain wallets or apps or memes or things that dominate the community? You know, you might be a bit old for that now, but what's the community like in terms of attitudes and trends and memes and applications and all that? What's the reality of it, Andre?
Well, I think that yes, the crypto community and even the stocks community for people that are in the 20s is really a lot about memes. You know, you can see at Wall Street Bets and Reddit, you know, it's just full of memes about how like the United States Fed is regulating things, or Fed Jerome Powell, or even in Korea also, right? These memes are really the crypto community. I feel like, to be honest, to be fair to the crypto community, I think that's people that are willing to take on a lot more risk.
Mm.
And typically people in the 20s don't have a lot to lose, so it's kind of logical for them to try to actually have a little bit more risk. You know, they don't have a family they have to feed, you know. But especially in the Korean community, I'm not too sure if the Korean community does this like due diligence into like aping into a coin, into buying a coin. You know, they don't really check the white paper, which is basically what the coin is supposed to do, the business strategy or the functions of it. You know, and they just buy it because a friend recommended it, a YouTube guy could recommended it, and it's definitely gonna go up. You know, just trust me, bro. That kind of like not really factual or evidence-based crypto community is, well, thinking is really plagued, you know. But I saw, you know, a funny story actually was that I saw on Instagram, you know, my friend downloaded Upbeat, you know, he was asking, so
What's
which coins do
Upbeat?
I buy?
What's up?
Upbeat is the Korean exchange, right? It's the
Okay.
Korean exchange, the biggest Korean exchange for cryptocurrency. There's two of them basically, which is Upbeat and Bithum. So my friend is like, oh, which ones do I buy? Do I buy the ones with the cool name? That's the kind of standard that has been placed, I feel like, in Korean, in the Korean community, which is really risky. But I mean, if you're just playing it as a way to gamble money, you know, because crypto can be used for an investment, but also it can be used just for gambling, right? And what I personally defined is investment, and how you can separate the two between investment and gambling is what's more likely to actually make you money, right? And people relying on other people's like judgment, I don't really think that it's good. And especially I really can show the evidence for this, because if you go into, let's say, CoinMarketCap, which is a website that aggregates data, cryptocurrency, and you look at Upbeats and the most traded volume for coins, you know, it's usually really small or riskier cryptocurrencies, right? Typically abroad in global exchanges, it's always going to be number one, Bitcoin. Okay. Sometimes it comes and goes, but always number one is Bitcoin. Ethereum comes next usually. And then there's usually a top 10 coins that are being traded. But in Korea, you see like coins like Steam, Axie, Golem, Remix, and these smaller cap coins, just because because the investors in Korea are seeking, I guess, more profits, right? Taking on more risk to potentially have more upside, right? And that's really what it seems to be the trend in Korean crypto.
I want to ask you about, you know, these apps, what you would actually need on your phone in Korea to do this. But I think just for a bit of cultural maybe comparison, like I'm from the United Kingdom, and whenever like there's a football game, the Premier League comes on, you have people coming at you on adverts like, place a bet now, who's going to score first, right? And you're encouraged to bet all the time on your phones, £5, £10. In Korea, like, gambling's illegal. You can get in big trouble for gambling. So I wonder how much that repression of I remember when I first came, there were all these like Iyagi Pada gambling things across Jongno, but they all got shut down. But I wonder how much the repression of gambling in society, although it still takes place, it's illegal, you can't do it, that pushes people into this kind of high risk, high reward type action, which is different from in the international communities. Now, Andre, like you were talking about this, if you pick up a Korean person's phone, like Korean people don't use WhatsApp, they use Kakao generally, right? And they're all different apps, they're slightly different. If you were a crypto bro in Korea, are there certain apps that you need to have? Do you have like this exchange one, and then you have a wallet? How does that work on your phone?
Yeah, so if you're a regular crypto bro in Korea, you definitely are gonna have either Upbeat or Bithum, which is the two major exchanges. And with Upbeat, you're required to make a Korean bank account for this specific exchange, which is called K-Bank. And for Bithum, you're required to download this app by Donghyeop. And these are definitely the apps that you have. But apart from that, I think that you will have something to look at charts. So the interface for Korean or really a lot of exchanges for trading is not really that good. So you probably have Trading View, which allows you to see the price action of almost all the assets around the world. You're probably going to have Binance, which is the biggest global exchange outside of Korea. And these are definitely the apps that you're going to have. And probably you're going to be having a lot of YouTube recommendations about coins and stuff like that. Unfortunately, yeah.
You sent me one video, and after that, my algorithm was messed up, man. Like the next day, I was like, "Oh no, come on, it's coming back, it's coming back." But yeah, that's the thing of it. So you have those apps. Did you say one of them you have to have a Nonghyup bank account?
Yeah.
So these are connected. So Nonghyup is like it's also a supermarket. You can get Nonghyup markets, and you can get But that's a legitimate bank, though, isn't it? In Korea.
Yeah. So these are definitely legitimate banks. I think that they want you to be able to prove that you live in Korea and that you are Korean. And there's a lot of background checks in Korea, and you have to have a real actual bank account for this. You can't use although you might have a regular bank account at Nonghyup, you have to make another one for that purpose, specifically.
That's really interesting, because I thought all this stuff was kept in like digital wallets or things like this, but you're saying the transaction and money goes through one of these legitimate Korean banks or an account there.
So there's two ways of doing it, and I think the common crypto bro will just be using exchanges. But if you're the people that have been into it a lot deeper, they'll have their private wallets, right? That are not held by custodian wallets like exchanges or things of this nature, right? And you'll probably be using MetaMask, which is the biggest decentralized wallet, right? To hold your assets. And in crypto, you have something called like not your wallet, not your coins, basically. And if a cryptocurrency exchange is holding your assets, technically there's been history of exchanges being hacked and robbed, so a lot of those funds may or may have not been refunded to the user. But it's best for you to hold your assets in a private manner. You can use MetaMask, send your assets, to hold these, because you never really know when they're gonna get hacked.
Yeah, I've even heard stories of North Korea and other, just anywhere around the world, not just North Korea, people in England as well, of course, but that vulnerability is huge. We're meant to come to this part of it later, but you've mentioned a few times that in Korea, only Korean people can access these services, right? So foreigners are not allowed. So let's just jump into that a little bit now. Is that something like you approve of? Because I'm a permanent resident. I voted in the local elections recently. I can do that. Signing up for anything as a foreigner in Korea is ridiculously hard, because I don't have a 3-syllable name and everything becomes, am I David Andrew Tizzard David Andrew? It's weird. What's your take on this idea of foreigners not being able to access the Korean crypto thing legally? Is that good? Is that bad? Is that what happens in other countries as well? So it's part of the norm, or it's like another Kimchi weirdness thing here? Do foreigners access it like secretly, or is it just really tough?
Well, foreigners are able to access it through, so for example, you could sign up for an exchange in the UK if you have a UK bank account, and you could buy Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency using that exchange and send it to, actually you could not send it to the Korean exchange, but I think it definitely seems that to be a little bit unfair to foreigners, and this is really not, unfortunately this is not really surprising though. With a lot of the my coworkers, we have a few foreign coworkers, and they have not been able to buy crypto using Korean exchanges and access this, right? But I really don't know what are the motivations for this, but definitely when there's a Kimchi Premium, there's a rush of, let's say, foreign entities trying to gain access to Korean exchanges to make profit from that uh, premium, right? But it really does seem unfair. I think that Korea is progressing to be more foreign friendly, hopefully, but at this moment, it definitely seems like it's unfair and something that could be changed, easily. Like if you're able to meet all of the standards, if you're able to make a bank account in Korea using your real identity, then you should be able to actually access all of these things. Maybe someone that is not able to make a Korean bank account might be barred and not allowed to trade in Korean exchanges, and that might be, I guess, fair. I'm not too sure, but if you're able to make a Korean bank account using your foreign alien registration, which that's been changed name, then you should definitely be able to do this. I think that this needs to be changed quite right now, actually.
Yeah, get more people involved, I guess. I was part of the Bomubu, the Justice Ministry program that changed that alien to foreigner, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a little bit of information. It's weird, though, that sometimes I remember seeing like taxi firms, like digital taxi firms come into Korea, and then the Korean, like Uber, and then the government will say, no, you can't do that, and kick them out. And then a year later, they'll release Kakao Taxi and things like this. There is this internal development that sometimes takes place in Korea to protect. But it makes sense. And another thing is, we talked about gambling. I can go to all the casinos in South Korea. I can go there, and I'm not a degenerate gambler. I have many vices, but gambling's not one of them. And I can get free whiskey and play roulette and poker. As a Korean, you can't. And that's a weird thing, isn't it? The way these rules and everything work. One of the reasons that this has been in the news recently in Korea is because of Luna. Now, even if you're not a crypto bro or anything like that, I think crypto bro, is that the right word? Are there other words? Let's come to that.
Degen.
Degen, like degenerate. Is that what it is? A degen.
An ape or degen, yeah.
What's an ape? Like the monkeys, the NFTs? Or?
Yeah, like a monkey. Yeah.
Okay, so right, the degens, the apes, right, and the crypto bros. Even if you weren't into that scene, this Luna story was just like on all the news. It was in all the newspapers. And so I want to talk a little bit about this Luna thing. And you told me about the gentleman behind it, Do Kwon, which is not his real name, but what kind of figure is he like an Elon Musk figure? Because you were saying he has some very provocative tweets. I don't want to only see it through an American lens or something like that, but I'm just trying to understand this person and their position in the Korean cryptocurrency community.
Yeah, so the CEO of Terraform Labs is the creator of Luna. He has another co-founder, but he's not as outspoken. But
and Luna is a cryptocurrency, right?
Yeah, sorry, Luna is a Korean cryptocurrency.
Okay, yeah.
And the CEO Do Kwon actually attended Stanford for computer science, and he's very outspoken, charismatic on Twitter. And he really, what he loves to do was shit talk other stable coins projects, and influential people, much like Elon Musk, right? And he was also out there making outlandish things, but one of the things that he, I guess, could characterize him is making a $1 bet and kind of like cyber pressuring someone to make a $1 million bet with him, and they bet on the price of Luna a year after, if it's going to be above what it currently is or below what it currently is, right? And definitely, if you've seen any kind of news about this, you know that he lost the bet. But this event, that happened after all of this shit talking was this event of massive capital destruction caused by his firm. And precisely around like $40 billion, or I guess, I think it was almost 50 also at this highest, right?
50, right? 50 billion.
Yeah, 50 billion, right? Dollars. Just poof, gone in a matter of, let's say, less than a week.
How much is that in Korean? It's probably too big to even think about, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's too many zeros.
Yeah. Just use dollars. Yeah.
So while this was happening, he tweets out also, like, although he maybe should have been concentrating on how to solve this problem of his cryptocurrency tanking, his stablecoin tanking. He was out there, saying like steady lads deploying more capital, which now it's used for as a meme, and the amount of memes that were constructed out of all of the things that he talked shit about have like blown up during this time, during this crash. And if you would have been on Twitter, definitely it's a very useful tool to use for cryptocurrencies, at least. You would have seen a humongous amount of memes just pointing every single thing that he said that basically was unfounded, maybe he shouldn't have said that, right? And like, for example, when he was making that $1 million bet, he was like, oh, I don't debate poor people on Twitter, these kinds of things, and he's out there for insulting projects like DAI that are competitors, he's a very like outspoken individual, but karma, I think, maybe exists in this world, and what happened after, when we can talk about it, was a market crash, or his cryptocurrency started to depeg, which I'll go more later on about.
Yeah, I want to talk about that and the stable coin and this $50 billion lot, because these is huge amounts of money. First two questions on what you've just said there on Do Kwon. The first one is, does he do this in English or Korean? You said he was Stanford educated. So does a lot of this communication, like steady bros and hold the fort, is that going on in English or Korean?
Yeah, that's all going in English, actually. He's he's fluent in English, that's why he's been able to gather all of this attention. Usually, like, CEOs of Korean projects cannot have that outreach because they have a language barrier, and although someone can translate it for you, it kind of sounds artificial, kind of doesn't really connect with people. And there's just that kind of like news, there's that kind of like really small things that you can tell apart, between connecting with people and what someone has translated, right?
I know the feeling very well. People look at my Korean writing and they're like, no, David, it's too proper. It's not right. That's not how we write things. So I show it to my nephew and I was like, change that for me. Do you think, because of the way this crypto market is, and I might be off base here, but there is a necessity for these people to be charismatic, to be outspoken, because it draws attention, and all publicity, even if it's bad stuff, is good publicity, because now we know who Do Kwon is, and like, I don't know any other CEOs or crypto bros in Korea. So does that actually help? Is that part of what makes or drives the industry? This meme, this being outspoken, this being a figure, is that necessary? Well,
I don't think it's necessary, but it definitely does help, whenever you're able to gather a lot of like attention, although it might be bad, that really helps with, I guess, your clout, your hype. And it definitely helped with the growth of Luna. Like, you can talk about, let's say, outspoken figures like Elon Musk, let's say Donald Trump, or Conor McGregor, people like in various industries, and the
Kanye West,
the one who shit talks the most really gathers a lot of attention. He's like on a newspaper all of the time about what he said, and it definitely seems like a positive. But unfortunately, with this crash, it definitely seems like he was given accountability of his words. With all of the movies that were produced, right?
It's incredible the amount of money. But just before we go into this huge shock to the Korean market, I mean, because Korea is doing so well across so many fields at the moment, whether it's movies, whether it's Park Chan-wook at Cannes, and the music, the dramas, all crushing it. But then you get this huge Korean devastation in their crypto market. Before we get into that, I thought I knew a little bit about this digital currency, but Luna, this cryptocurrency, started by Do Kwon, and it now uses something called stable coins. Now, this was a new thing for me. Like, so can you try to explain, before we talk about the crash, how these crypto coins and stable coins and Luna uses this kind of thing?
Okay, so basically there's two parts of it, right? Which is UST, which is an algorithmically pegged stablecoin, and Luna, which is the governance token. So if you hold the governance token, you can vote on proposals that are vote for or reject for proposals that Luna makes, right? But basically, the UST, it's an algorithmic stablecoin, and it maintains its price to $1, right? And in general, we use this stablecoin because we use stablecoins in the market because cryptocurrency is very volatile, and so most of the coins are going up and down in price a lot. So because of this fluctuation, it is an unattractive thing to use just for transactions. Because I might send you $100, right? But you might have received 98. So this need for a stablecoin stablecoins solve this. Typically the biggest stablecoin right now is USDT. Followed by, I think, USDC or BUSD. And these are all, most stablecoins like these are backed by an underlying asset that you can redeem dollar for dollar. So you can basically change $1 of a stablecoin, USDT, to an actual dollar, right? So, for example, let's say USDT has reserves backing it with USD, and also they have loans, they have bonds, they have precious metals that are basically, in case that everyone starts to trade in their USDT for actual dollars, they can actually supply all of the demand. Although they have not disclosed this, we don't know if it's 100%, but it's closer to a majority, I feel like, right? And on the other hand, we have Luna, which is the currency backing USDT. And the way that they interact each other is by being able to swap one for each other. Luna, the governance token, you can change it for one UST, $1 worth of Luna, you can change it for UST. So in simple terms, if the way that you calibrate or you maintain this price is people will buy and sell Luna and UST to maintain its normal price to $1. So if UST is above $1, you can buy $1 worth of Luna, sell one UST and change it to one UST and sell it for over $1. And if you have UST below $1, right, you can buy one UST for less than $1 and change it to $1 of Luna and sell it for profit, right? So this is the arbitrage mechanism that counterbalance and pegs the price to $1 basically. And the supply and demand the supply contracts and expands depending on the demand of Luna or UST, right? And however, like UST had a limit on how much you can trade, how much you can mint one day. And precisely they had a minting capacity of 293 million, right? But what happens if people withdraw more than 293 million?
293 million what? Sorry. Coins?
UST.
UST,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's the stable coin?
Yeah. So, well, this term of a death spiral happens, right? And actually, Do Kwon actually went to an interview like 2 months ago, and he predicted the death spiral himself, although he said it was statistically unlikely, He was in a podcast called Unchained podcast, and he predicted this. So, well, what happens in this death spiral is basically UST supply starts to decrease, right? Because let's say someone sold a lot of UST and they wanted to redeem it for a lot of Luna, which leads to minting a lot more Luna to bring back the price of UST to $1, right? Then, which makes Luna price decrease, and it also decreases the confidence in the ecosystem, right? Because momentarily it's spiked down, and it makes holders looking at that, rush to redeem their Luna, which mints more Luna, and this cycle of basically selling, panic, selling continues and revolves. And this is exactly what happened and what destroyed the 40 billions of capital, right? And just a week.
So this perfect system, because what I understood about this previously, and I might be wrong, but you had like one coin, you'd buy Dogecoin, you'd buy Bitcoin, Ethereum. But with this new thing, like with Luna, you would have that one, but it was also connected to another one. So there was this balance operating between it to avoid the volatility.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it reminds me of the idea of having like gold reserves, you know,
it's much more similar to that, you know. Like I think the US dollar gold reserves actually, the Nixon administration changed it because of the possibility of death spiral. I'm not too sure about this, but at the time, you know, there was a lot of countries that were using US dollars, and they could redeem their US dollars for actual gold, right? But since countries started to redeem a lot more gold, the United States government had to stop their gold standard, you know, because of a possibility that everyone might rush to redeem it for gold, and there might not be actually enough gold for everyone, right? So it's quite similar to, let's say, I guess it's comparable to a gold standard, right?
Yeah. So just before we get into this idea of the effects of a market or this losing all of that money, was it $40 billion? It's incredible, like, this amount of money. Before we get into that, because that has real life effects on people in it, right? So I want to talk about that, and also the idea that, well, that money doesn't just disappear, it goes somewhere else, right? So if one company loses money, the money doesn't just evaporate, but it will go somewhere else in the system. Is there a case, we talked about the charismatic nature of people online with these, that if Do Kwon predicted this death spiral on Unchained, is there an idea that people can manipulate these markets for their own benefit? We've seen Elon Musk and Twitter, and he might make certain comments. You get the idea that, you know, if you're involved in these things, people want to make profit. That's not a bad thing in a capitalist system. Is there an idea that Do Kwon perhaps knew this was going to happen, so covered his bases, and he might have made bank while 40 billion got lost?
Yeah, so the South Korean government is currently investigating him, and it really seems like unlikely that they're gonna be able to charge him with anything. He did seem like he was trying his best to save this, and although I don't really put the fault at Do Kwon, or maybe there is quite a bit of fault in him, but what
would the fault be? What would the fault be, or what would the charge be? Sorry, Andre. Is it just negligence, or is it creating a faulty system, or shit tweeting, or shit posting, or?
I think he didn't act in malice though, so sure. I'm not too sure on how they would be able to like give him a crime for this, but
right.
There is some bad actors, especially in this, you know, because if someone understood that if you have $1 billion, let's say, redeeming its UST for actual Luna, or redeeming its UST for what at the time was allowed to do was Bitcoin also, then you can crash all of this, right? And people have actually suspected BlackRock and Citadel, you know, to be.
What's BlackRock and Citadel, Andre? BlackRock and Citadel, I don't know what they are.
Oh,
sorry.
BlackRock and Citadel. Okay, an easy way to think about it is like if the Illuminati were to exist, right? These entities.
Are we going QAnon here? Are we going? What's going on?
No, I don't. I say this as a joke, right? But
yeah.
they're entities that control a lot of money. You know, they control probably. I think over $1 trillion worth of capital, you know, is under the control. They're immense hedge funds, and they were yeah, they just have a lot of money to, and they're controlling a lot of assets. But
Two
if
separate companies. Sorry, I just want to.
two
Is that
separate, yeah, two
BlackRock
separate,
and Citadel, both
yeah,
American or
yeah,
global
both
or?
American, yeah.
Okay.
So people have thought, like they went on forums, stuff like that, and they thought, oh, it's definitely BlackRock and Citadel, but there's no evidence for this to being them, and there's no evidence for them to, there's no evidence for who it is actually right now, right? Nothing has come up, but apart from just who is at fault, like the Luna Foundation Guard, so Do Kwon basically, was accumulating a lot of BTC, and they wanted to be the biggest BTC wallet in the
BTC
world.
is Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin, yes.
I'm trying to keep up, mate. Yeah, yeah.
And basically, what they had to do was if a large entity changed their Bitcoin for UST, and then while the market was crashing, right, everything was going down in prices naturally, they wanted to redeem this for Bitcoin in itself, right? But it's the worst timing possible because in a sense, Luna would have bought high and sold low, and they would have lost a lot of capital, right? So they're in this like massive shit show of trying to repeg, and also someone causing this, and a lot of capital just being completely changed out of their hands, you can say it also, there's a lot more fault in certain things that they did, like for example, Anchor Protocol. Anchor Protocol was basically their DeFi protocol where they give you 20% returns. It's a simple way to think about it as just like a savings account, right? But they basically give you 20% of profit, if you were to stake UST, so which is outlandish for, let's say, a bank to do this, but in crypto it's really not that much, there's outlandish rewards in almost every single protocol, right? But basically they treated this like a lost leader, and they were paying the people the rewards, through the yield reserves, and if you look at the charts right now, then you could have told that they only had 1 month of runway before the music stopped and chaos ensued, right? Before they had to reinject more money. And this, in a sense, is the reason why I guess crypto gets a bad rep about being, let's say, a Ponzi scheme, But in itself, this was basically reinjecting the money of people that have been prior, and giving it to the people. No, reinjecting the money of people that have recently joined and giving it to people that have been there for a longer time, right? And it's really not surprising, because after every single market crash, there's been historically that there's coins that just go to zero because they have a Ponzi-nomics, Ponzi economics, and it's really not. They definitely have fault in that, because they screwed up with that, but they were trying to achieve something that has historically been impossible to do, Do Kwon was also part of this, previously was known for this stable coin that he made, right? But that also failed, and historically all algorithmically maintained or pegged stable coins have failed, right? So this was proof that it seems very unlikely that someone's gonna be able to do this successfully in the short future, like UST and Luna, they were if you look at all of the amount of money, they only had 40% of the supply for UST, right?
Okay.
Which means that basically, let's say if they were holding 30,000, let's say they were holding 10 billion Luna, 10 billion UST around in their ecosystem, then only 4 billion could actually be redeemed, dollar for dollar, and that's the basic fault that a lot of algorithmic stablecoins have, and that's the sketchy part that I think that needs to be looked at more deeply.
I think they might need to change the name of this stablecoin thing. It doesn't sound
Yeah.
very stable. It doesn't sound like it works, basically.
Yeah.
That
Actually, they've released this version 2, so when something really bad happens in crypto or in a cryptocurrency, they call it a fork. So they've released the second version of this, um, and now they call the normal, like Luna and UST, Luna Classic. That's the old currency now, and this is the new one.
is it called Luna New? Is it called Luna Zero?
No,
Luna...
no, no. It's just called Luna now. They call the
Okay.
old one Luna Classic, and this one is just the normal one. Yeah.
So we lost $40 billion. Let's change the name and try again. How? Jeez, man. Like, my wife gets angry if I lose like 400원 or 4,000원 or something like that on a coffee. She's like, 4,000원. How? For people, we spoke at the beginning of this conversation, Andre, like about young people and those working in their 20s and 30s. They might start investing in crypto in South Korea because the job market's not there, the security's not there. That story that used to dominate Korea was study hard, go to university, get a job, get a house, bang. That was that. But that's harder to do these days. Like it's almost impossible to get a house in Seoul. It's hard to get a job even if you graduate. So more and more people were going in. You said like 13% of the population, something like that, with the crypto. If this huge thing in Korea, what kind of effect does that have on the people? What kind of effect does it have on your industry and people working on that? Is it like the Asian financial crisis, or are people surviving? What's been the effect on humans here, Andre?
Well, the effect on humans, it definitely seems to be quite large. Unfortunately, I think I've seen previously that there was 8 committed suicides regarding this. And people lost their life savings. People were taking out mortgages and taking out loans. They were doing this so that they could put it in Anchor and pay 8% of the interest of a loan and gain 20% of the profit, for the rewards. And it's really put people in a bad financial position, especially Koreans, because Koreans were the people that were most likely, they were the ones that were buying this while this crash was happening. I personally also held some Luna, if I were to be honest, but I've lost like not a lot, just like a couple, less than $1,000, right? But
still,
definitely seems to be quite big impact on the trust of Koreans to cryptocurrencies, to the market itself. It's reached waves across globally, because a lot of people listen to this and hear this, they're like, oh, then they get scared away. It's probably slowed back the industry, for a year or two, maybe. I'm not too sure about what are really the true consequences for the industry, but definitely seems that for humans, the human side of it, there's people that have lost everything, And, although maybe Do Kwon actually had a truly well intentioned project, I think that there needs to be a lot more like critical thinking and a lot more analysis on a lot more due diligence on things like this, right? So before anyone really goes buy a cryptocurrency, I would urge them to look at their white paper, and like if they're doing anything else that has been historically been done, look at how it has acted, right? How the mechanisms actually work. And if you don't understand it, then I will recommend people to actually not invest to it, because that's the reason why I feel like a lot of Koreans, because this is a Korean project, they had a lot of money tied into this, because it's the biggest Korean project that has, I think, ever existed, right? And for the Korean community, it definitely seems like it's quite a big loss. But if you were smart about it and you've diversified and you've done your due diligence, then you would have probably not lost quite a lot. You know, not had all of your chips, uh, not placed all of your chips in one hand, right?
Mhm.
Or gone all in.
Eggs in the basket we use in
Yeah,
England.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
how, and we talked about how trends are so big and Korean people are in it, so there would have been many that were just invested into Luna. What's the, like, I know you said that this will have affected Korea's reputation in the international crypto community. Just in general, what's that like? Because I don't know, I'm going to do some like positive stereotype generalizations. Like Korean people are pretty good at math, and that, you know, that's an offensive positive stereotype, but bloody hell, it's true sometimes. The math homework that my nephew does, I can't do it, and he's like 16. It's incredible. Um, so you would imagine that what's the question I'm asking you here, Andre, is what's the reputation like of Korea in the international crypto community?
Well, definitely globally, if you look at crypto investors, they looked at them a lot more like um, a lot more gambling, trading patterns, those kind of things.
Okay.
But for crypto projects, uh, I'm not too sure if we have a truly great reputation,
Mm.
but especially after this. But if you look at the amount of projects that has happened in Korea, you know, there's really not one really truly lasting one. You know, it's not like we don't have a Ethereum or we don't have a top the 10 coin. Well, we did, but not for long, right?
Mm.
Uh, but in the from a global perspective, I definitely seems like there's a lot more innovation happening in Korea, and there's this divide actually between the global perspective because they see Korea as actually a lot as very innovative and very like fast paced in adapting technology, but also there's not really that there's language gap, you know, because a lot of the things that are shared, the documents,
Mm.
they're they're not geared towards I guess a global community, right?
Hmm.
And the only reason why I feel like Luna had this outreach also was because Do Kwon was completely fluent in English and he was out there making his name, you know, like making his name known.
Mm.
And but apart from that, you know, it doesn't seem like we have a positive outlook on Korean cryptos going up, right? Because of this, but uh, uh, I'm I'll be lying if I said that people are probably gonna like forget this. You know, it, I think that a lot of people that are gonna be invested into crypto globally are not gonna be looking at this as oh, they're gonna be looking at this as a major event, but they're not gonna it's not gonna stop them from buying a cryptocurrency that was made in Korea, right? It doesn't
Mm.
seem logical, right?
Sure. And if you look at Korea's history, anything, it gets knocked down and it gets back up again. Like Korean people are pragmatic, resilient. They overcome, and whether,
Yeah.
you know, when tragedies or things happen, look where it is today. And so yeah, those things can happen. It's interesting to the way you present this because I didn't really thought of it like that. That Luna as a Korean project, like Luna as a top 10 world crypto coin, like because Korea likes to be Korea number one fighting.
Yeah.
It wants to be Billboard number one. It wants the Oscars, it wants the billboards, and it makes the people feel proud, right? And so that will be a shock to the jasinggam or the confidence, and I get that. But if Luna is Korean, this might be a stupid question. Is Bitcoin Japanese, American? Is Ethereum, like I forget the dude's name, and he's a very skinny kind of Eastern European Russian dude. Are they associated with a certain country like Luna is with Korea, or are they just like global?
No, I think that maybe in the beginning parts of a project,
Mm.
you might have actually a sense of nationalism for a project.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that quickly wears off. I mean, Bitcoin, you really don't know where Satoshi Nakamoto is from. To this day, we really don't know who the creator of Bitcoin is.
Name is a bit of a hint if that is the real name. It doesn't sound German.
But I mean, this is the name of a forum, that he had
Yeah.
on a forum. So
Yeah.
like I could have named Satoshi Nakamoto in a forum,
Sure.
but for Vitalik, although he's Russian, if I'm not mistaken, and he lived abroad also in Canada, right? But there's not really a sense of nationalism for cryptocurrency projects, like. But for Korean projects, it definitely seems like there is, because partly because there's so much interest gathered for Korean between Korean investors, just the amount of hype and the amount of like people that have already invested in crypto oozes that,
Yeah.
influences that.
Sure. I want to move on to the law, but before we do that, Andre, is there anything that we need to explain about the tech? Like, I've tried to understand the apps, the wallets, the stable coins, the crash of Luna. Is there anything like from a tech point that we're missing that you think we should understand, or are we on to law now?
Well, we could go on and on about tech because there's constantly new innovations coming in, but there's these new concepts that have been introduced, right? And that mostly common people have known, like Metaverse, NFTs, right? But apart from that, I think that it's really important for people to know what DAO and smart contracts are,
DAO, DOW.
DAO, yeah, DAO.
Oh, like the Dao De Jing, like
Yeah,
Tokyo,
yeah. So
Noja.
it stands for decentralized autonomous organization. So basically, what this enables is basically a sort of governance on a way to vote for things in a project, for new proposals on what to do, for a common purpose. Like we can look at, let's say, Constitution DAO. And I think it was in September that they tried to buy the U.S. Constitution, the copy of the U.S. Constitution, and they've all assembled because in a matter of 10 days to buy, and they've raised $40 million, right? Unfortunately, they were not able to buy the Constitution, but
Unfortunately.
but
Yeah.
what the technologies that are behind this really give an outlook on what can be actually possible. If you have a group of common people that have the similar interests, and they have a common goal, then you can gather up, and anyone can participate with their money. If you own, let's say even for Luna, if you own one Luna, then you could have participated. I'm not sure if it was one, but if you own some sort of Luna, some amount of Luna, then you could have participated in this governance policy on how they're gonna mint, or how much they're gonna mint on certain things like that, And this is the new developments that are coming up, and that are probably gonna be still prominent, and I hope that are implemented more. That I hope that there's more DAOs. Additionally, also smart contracts, right? So Bitcoin in itself, or cryptocurrency, is programmable money. It's internet money that you can program. And what
do you mean program it? Sorry, Andre, to cut in. What do you mean it's money that you can program? It's internet money, but it's programmable.
Yeah. So, for example, if you look at Ethereum, you can put code into it, so that through smart contracts, so that if a set amount of conditions are met, then money is sent to a person that you wanted to send money to, right?
What kind of conditions? So like if you send me this file and this file is correct, then I send you that money. That you mean like that?
Yeah. So there's that, or let's say you can set conditions such as, on this day, I'm gonna send this much amount of money to him. A simple way to think about it, right?
That's so, just like using Kakao Bank or something like that. You just send.
Yeah. Well, you can automate that though. On Kakao, I'm not sure if you can make it so that it's immediately sent, but
Okay, okay.
these types of smart contracts and DAOs and NFTs, which is basically um, true ownership of digital assets, right? These are the the things that are gonna be able to enable innovation in the space, right? And if people are not aware of these, like I guess four concepts, you know, the metaverse, the NFTs, the DAO, or smart contracts, I think it's a great place to try to understand this, right? I'll definitely be talking more about this and later, but I I think that that's the tech stuff that I would have it as a preliminary, you know, understanding on whether you understand or not, you know, crypto, right? So
I just thought about that idea of the DAO buying the copy of the U.S. Constitution, and I thought maybe they should have done it, and they should have just written in there like "no more guns" and then given it back. That would solve some problems, I guess. Let's thank you for that. So you've got the DAO, the smart contracts, the NFTs, and the metaverse. I think my knowledge is up to date now. Can we talk about law a little bit, Andre? Because you know, there are some law in Korea, I mean, because there are some countries around the world where like crypto is just a no-go. It doesn't happen. The governments are against it. Some countries, the governments are all for it. In Korea, it feels like, and I read this as an outsider, but when I see the news stories in the newspaper, it feels like the governments and the banks are always kind of a bit, we're going to let you do it. Actually, we're changing our mind. There are these regulations, take these regulations away. It always seems like things are being negotiated or in flux and the government are not quite sure how to go. Can you give us maybe an overview on like what the law is, or is the law in a good place? What's the state of the union in terms of legality of crypto in Korea, Andre?
yeah, so crypto is fully legal, and actually the new president, Yoon Suk-yeol, has pledged to be pro crypto, and I think that we're really at a good place, but it could definitely be better. It's of my understanding that actually policymakers have been talking to the people at the forefront of this innovation, right? People that are um, making metaverses or uh, developing new protocols, because they need to understand the concepts before they can make an effective policy. And that's really a forward step on this. But yeah, fully legal. You can, um, although right now they're not taxable. You know, I think
What does that mean?
it
They're
would.
not taxable.
So if you hold cryptocurrency and you make a certain amount of profit, then
Yeah.
Korean government has proposed that you pay a 20% tax on your profit. This was supposed to actually be implemented this year, you know, but it's been postponed to 2023, and hopefully it gets postponed a little bit more.
Because you don't want to pay tax. Yeah. Tax sucks, man. Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of tax, right now, it's this midsection between not actually being real money, kind of being like internet computer money, you know, game money, and I like the idea of policymakers actually taking the time and understanding this and doing the appropriate laws for this. Um, there's some things that if I could criticize, you know, like the ban of ICOs, which is initial coin offerings, like much like IPOs in the stock world. Um, they've been banned since like 2017, but there's just ways to get around this. You know, you could just set up a company abroad, you know, instead of in Korea, and still have all of the workers in Korea, right? This doesn't really make sense. The travel rule, which is basically if you want to send crypto to a Korean exchange, you can only send it in batches of $1,000 unless you confirm where that money came from, right? That seems I'm not sure if that's really positive, if that's really that smart, because people just get around that. You know, you just send 50 transactions of $1,000 and you can still get it done, but it
Mm.
really doesn't seem like it's truly effective. Or I think Korean capital controls, so that uh, money is sent abroad, that also needs to be fixed, because every time that there's a mania phase in crypto, Kimchi Premium insists
Mm.
Korean people pay higher for the same crypto, and it's been a downside for a lot of Koreans, But I'm actually quite optimistic on the legality of crypto and on the policies in Korea, though.
It's good that you're optimistic for the future. I was curious because I've done a lot of work on the politics and the presidential elections and things like that. But I'd never really come across President Yoon's stance on crypto before. Maybe I just wasn't looking for it, or it went over. Do you know anything more about that? Is it something explicitly he's said, or that's just he said crypto is okay? Or is it just a vibe, or is it explicit? Is he doing anything? Like, does he have a wallet? Do you know anything about that, or is it just something?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about more specific things about what he's planning to do.
Mm,
It does seem like it's just generally more he's just pro, but there's nothing really been concrete announced. I don't have like his true opinions on what he thinks about this. I'm guessing that he's of the fact that, oh yeah, it's internet money. Yeah, why not? I'm for this. Why not? But he doesn't truly maybe understand what is the implications of crypto.
yeah, but I think that's hard for many of us to get. But yeah, it's good that there are these positive things. Just stepping away, perhaps from Korea, like El Salvador and the Central African Republic, they've adopted. I might be wrong on this, but I think they've adopted Bitcoin as their national currency, right? And so they're like that. But then if you look north of the Yalu and things, you've got China, which is, as I understand, China are like, no, Bitcoin is degenerate. We manage the money. We are the government, right? Xi Jinping fighting. Do you have any stance on that? Is like, because one is completely blocking it out and the other is adopting it at the government level. So you've said Korea is in a pretty positive place, right? It's in the middle between those two things. Should it go more towards the El Salvador Central African Republic way, or it's good where it is?
Definitely seems like it needs to go into more of the El Salvador or Central African way. But to be honest, I don't think it's likely though. We're quite far apart from China in terms of regulation and the overall like sentiment towards crypto.
Mm.
But it seems quite unlikely that Korea is gonna adopt Bitcoin or uh, Bitcoin right now, or like maybe in the very long future it might. But I really don't think that we're at that stage of fully committing it to crypto economy, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
But especially after the crash of Luna, right? But it definitely seems like it's in between. Funny fact that like Chinese crypto regulation always seems to happen at the peak of when there's this mania phase in crypto. So you might be able to use it as a way to understand that I should probably sell this. Like in 2017, they've they've banned Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in itself because it really doesn't align with their uh, interests. They want
Mm-mm-mm.
the digital yuan, right? And in 2021, I think there was a ban for crypto mining in China also, right? Um, but I hope that although we are not like that, Korea is really not anything close to China in terms of its policy. I really hope that we're progressing more into the El Salvador and Central African Republic. But what I'm guessing is going to happen is that Korea is going to sit back, look how these policies has affected El Salvador and Central Republic, and adopt it in a perspective that it's best for them, right? Um, which is gonna take a lot of time.
But like you say, the most important thing, I guess, for people doing that thing is that crypto is fully legal and there's certain regulation. There's no tax on it at the moment. That's pretty interesting thing.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. I guess for the record, I should probably say this just so it's clear. I don't have any crypto or anything like that. I remember years ago, my friend Amos, who's big into meme culture, was trying to get me to buy Dogecoin. And one time I gave a lecture when we have Zoom backgrounds and I had like the Doge dog behind me, just like peeking over a mountain. And everybody thought it was an advert for me to buy crypto. I was like, nah, I don't yet. I don't have any. You mentioned mining. I just want to put that out there. You mentioned mining, Andre. And is there an environmental aspect to it? So regardless, of other things, is there an environmental aspect? And I feel like this about K-pop sometimes, that a lot of the success of K-pop groups or headlines are generated by how many YouTube streams they have. So Blackpink passes 1 billion for How Do You Like That? And they've got 1.1 on this. But to get those streams, you have people running like chain farms or like these hajegi things where they're just running computers, 4 or 5 platforms, 24 hours a day for kind of nothing really, just for numbers. Is there an environmental aspect with mining to this thing that we need to be aware of, or is it just like that's not the real conversation?
Well, it seems to be quite a minimal problem, but I do understand when people are saying, oh, there's environmental concerns about this, right? And to get to the specifics, if you're talking about, there's 2, I guess, main ways, but the main way that Bitcoin operates is through a proof of work consensus mechanism, and it requires a lot of computing power and electricity to mine Bitcoin and validate the transactions, right? But if you're comparing it dollar for dollar, for let's say the GDP of a country compared to the full amount of dollars that Bitcoin has generated, then I really don't think it's a fair argument, because if you compare it to any GDP per capita, then crypto is transactioning a lot more wealth than any other GDP per capita, right? And to be honest, the name of the game in crypto mining right now is, like I told you, like computing power and electricity cost. Computing power, we can't really do anything about, and it's really not harmful to the environment. Maybe there is an argument for that, but we're not going to address that right now. But the true inhibiting factor is the electricity cost, right? And if I were to think in the mindset of a miner, then I would think, what is the cheapest way I can use electricity, right? And the way that, I guess, energy is created, I'm not really an expert on energy, right? But my understanding of it is that there's always bottlenecks on how much you can store electricity in every single energy sector, producing sector. So the outlook that I have in the future is that most of the mining power for Bitcoin, for other coins that require a lot of electricity, are gonna go to these bottlenecks, and they're gonna be run when storages are full, and it really does seem like it's naturally gravitating towards either green energy, hydroelectric, these kinds of sustainable sources, and there's not much to criticize, because there's the positive change is already happening. The reliance on more green energy is already happening, I feel like, and the whole world is already gravitating towards that, and it wouldn't make sense for crypto or Bitcoin, to not gravitate towards that, right? And the economic incentives are aligned to being more environmentally friendly, and that's why in the long run I feel like it's gonna work itself out, to be honest.
Yeah, and we'll keep using paper straws at Starbucks until then. I hate paper straws, man. It's like, come on. I just want them to finish. I think that's my gripe. Rather than the environmental thing then, and rather than looking at what problems crypto might cause, what problems can crypto solve? So like if something's going to exist, or if things are going to survive, they have to be efficient, or they have to contribute, or they're there for a reason, they do something. So if you look at cryptocurrency, what problems do you think it can address in the world? What role does it play in that thing? Is it capable of making our lives better?
Yeah. In the most basic manner, I think it's a way to transfer money in a decentralized manner, right? That's the surface level understanding of the benefits of how it can improve the world. Like, for example, if you look at Russia, right? The Russian war, and the Russian ruble tanked, and there was a lot of people trying to like send their capital abroad, right? And the same reasons why crypto has been able to solve this problem for people stuck in, let's say, Ukraine or Russia, that are trying to like send their money abroad, is solving that problem in itself, right? But also it's solving the reliance on a centralized power, or let's say a nation, and its currency. Historically, if we look, most countries have gone through cycles of like where they had to, their currency was so inflated that they had to make a new one, right? Like with Peruvian, I lived in Peru, and in Peru we had Inti, and president kind of crashed it, so we had soles now, But this reliance on these centralized powers, I think that it's quite negatively affecting everyone, that it cannot access banks, that cannot access financial systems. And crypto in itself solves this. It makes the bankless banked, and it allows people to not only skip the government that they have that was corrupt, but also be able to access other sorts of decentralized services like apps, like for example, like I told you with smart contracts, and maybe a new topic that we can talk about is oracles, right? Oracles are taking data that is outside of the crypto world, and inserting it. So basically, what this allows, the combination of these two, what allows is basically, let's say, insurance, right? Let's say crop insurance, right? Let's say if I'm a farmer in Peru or farmer in Venezuela, and I cannot rely on the government or the institutions there for crop insurance because I know that they will not be able to do a competent job, then what innovations in crypto has allowed to do, or what it will allow to do, is people jumping over their government and being able to access crypto insurance, because and they'll be able to get, a certain amount of funding if temperatures, if a certain set of conditions are met, so let's say temperatures reach this amount, so crops are definitely going to die, or there's not enough rain, or these kind of conditions that are already, or weather conditions that are already available in the internet and are trustworthy, if we can rely on these sources of information to allow services, through oracles, which is attaching the weather patterns into the conditions of a smart contract, and then the smart contract distributes it in a permissionless way. There's not a computer saying, there's not a person behind a computer saying yes to this, no to that. There's just a contract that it says, and if those conditions are triggered, then they will be able to access these financial, these financial systems, that can massively improve their life, and it's not only for the context of, let's say, the people that are unbanked, but also for the people that are banked, like if I were to send money abroad right now, then what would be the best way, the fastest way, the cheapest way that I can send $1 billion abroad? Well, I think
Give it to me, I'll do it for you, mate.
I trust you with it. But yeah,
Western Union transfer or something, isn't it? Or you go to your bank, right?
Yeah, but they're gonna charge you how much are they going to charge for just that kind of transaction? And will I have to rely on the competence of the company, or should I rely on centralized systems that I know that transactions are being confirmed, and I know the amount of time it'll take? It'll be faster, cheaper, and in a sense, with less regulation than I would possibly want. Those are the kind of benefits that the positive influence that I see with crypto. I could go on more about this, but um, the basic premise of digital currency that is decentralized would be that, and the things around it, like that are constructed around it, NFTs, what was it, smart contracts, oracles, DAOs. Those are the things that will be able to supply more to financial services to people.
Is it more important? You explain like the insurance for crop insurance for people that they can't trust their government, or there might be corruption, there might be bribery and nepotism that goes on, and so being able to get like crypto insurance that's based on this coded information, like, or this smart contract that says, there was too much rain, so therefore we understand your insurance pays out. Does this mean that it's genuinely more advantageous for countries with more corrupt governments where they cannot control their institutions? So whereas that this system can help people in Peru or Venezuela, that if you're in London, actually, let's not talk about our government. If you're Jesus Christ, they'll be drinking in Downing Street or something while everyone else is locked down, right? If you're in, let's say, a developed country, then it becomes less necessary. It still might be good for trading and buying, or you want to buy things on the internet, go on the dark web and do some of that, but it's less necessary in developed countries. Is that a fair point, or it still has advantages here as well?
Well, I think it's even more, I don't know about the necessity, but the interactiveness on the benefits of crypto are even much more present for first world countries, right? I really do think that the people that are going to be involved in this are going to be the smartest people in the world at first, the people that are on the fringe. And these people are going to find new ways of like organizing together projects, right? Like through DAOs, through a collective, let's say, incentivized interests, right? It definitely seems like it's gonna be a lot more interactive for first world countries, because they're gonna be the first one in adopting. There already are the first ones adopting NFTs. There are already the first ones adopting metaverses. These kinds of concepts are already present, and the first world is the first that to actually adopt this, and later on it will, I guess, be more widely accessible to third world countries also, through more education about how these systems work.
Let's talk very quickly, Andre, about NFTs and metaverses then, because you've mentioned these a few times, and I think you've been, if I'm mistaken, tell me, but you've been working on these two in your employment recently. Like, the first question I want to ask you is, do you own any NFTs?
Yeah, I currently own one NFT.
Is it a monkey, or is it something else?
No,
I don't know.
I'm not rich enough to
okay.
own a monkey, but yeah, I've also owned several other NFTs, but I only own one. I only own that because it's impossible to sell right now.
Is it a picture of Do
Not out of my will.
Can you put forward a persuasive argument for NFTs? Because like the insurance things, the Venezuela, the Peru, I mean, I can completely get that, and I think that makes a lot of sense, right? And also remembering that I'm a bit of an old boomer Gonde type. I'm older, so it's there's a natural hesitancy from me. But can you put forward a compelling argument for NFTs?
Yeah, so like I said, crypto is programmable money, and NFTs are digital ownership, right? And this is a really key concept that people need to understand. I understand that most people see a picture of a monkey online and they see an NFT like that and they're like, oh, right click save. I own the NFT. But it's
Yeah.
not really working like that. Like a really easy way to understand it is much like baseball cards or Pokemon cards. Like I could actually make a Pokemon card and it will look almost exactly the same. And depending on how like great I am at copying these and how great of a scammer I am, I
Mm,
can actually sell it for the real thing, right? But what through the blockchain, like you're allowed to confirm that these digital assets are yours, and this is brings a new level of like ownership, right? Ownership that you own the real thing, right?
mm,
And you might see it as the first utility is collectibles, right? Exclusive from artists, Um, then the second is I think there's different ways of providing utility for these NFTs, right? Like for example, if you look at Royal.io, they are a project that have been selling NFTs, and basically what they do is they distribute the royalties of streaming services of music artists
mm,
to the NFT holders, right? So through a smart contract, I can say, you know what, on this time, if this amount of money is made by the royalties through streaming, then I'm gonna give 2% of that to this NFT holder. And these are kind of the NFT, the ways that you can innovate about in this industry. You can innovate most industries through this through NFTs. Like for example, let's look at other collectibles. Like if you own a Pokemon card and I give it to you or I sell it to you, the original artist does not have any profit, right?
mm. Right.
But with NFTs, I can program in that every single time that you trade, I get a 1% of your transaction fee because although it might not be a lot, that can accumulate over time, and actually I can get my fair share of how like hype or famous or good or something is, in the long
Mm,
term,
mm, mm, mm.
and these are the utility cases of NFTs, right? um, there's also like I feel like a true integration. There needs to be a true integration between the real world and NFTs, the value that can be provided by NFTs, right? And I'm hoping that in the future, or the way that I see in the future, is that there's going to be property ownership, but there's also going to be property ownership delegated through, I don't know, DAOs set up by smart contracts owned by NFTs, right? And these are the systems that will allow you to actually purchase a home, and I that's the argument that I can give right at the top of my head right now, but
Mm.
there's 1,000 more use cases on how you can develop NFTs to being more useful for not only a way to collect things, but also in a more utility function, right? In a more functional way, right?
The Pokemon or baseball cards is an interesting analogy because you've seen what we talked about trends. The Pokemon bread is like in Korea at the moment. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous I've been trying to get some of that for my kids, but it's like really hard. Like I give them an NFT instead of the Pokemon bread. Eat that.
That might cost more. That might cost more.
Yeah, it might do. It might do. Um, just drawing this, Andre, I think towards the end, what do you think about like tech and the future in South Korea? South Korea is one of the most wired, like, nations in the world. You spoke about Germany before we started recording. Like, they have terrible internet speed. Like, internet speed in Germany is terrible shit. But in Korea, it's like broadband, Wi-Fi everywhere you go. People are clued in. Tecton, like, Korea seems to be pretty conducive to this kind of technology, this kind of future getting online. People have, what do you call them now, like bouquets, these alternate characters and everything like that. Is the future, is tech, this is a good place for Korea? You're positive about this? Do you have any comments on, Korea going forward and its association with these new technologies that can at first seem kind of scary and weird to old people like us, but for you it's, it's the way forward? Do you have any comments on that? Andre?
Yeah, definitely seems like Koreans are gonna be the first adopters for any kind of technology, especially crypto technology right now. And it's just part of the high adaptability of technology, that the high pace of things, of how things evolve. And
Mm,
to be honest, the high pace of things, how everything goes really in Korea, you know. Um, but it does seem like very positive outlook for Korea in terms of its integration, you know, in terms of its users adopting this technology. I'm really not sure about if Korea is going to be the hub of making these technologies, because uh, historically a lot of these technologies has happened in Silicon Valley, or a lot of like hub spots where um, there's a lot of like cultures and the world's smartest people go to.
mm,
Uh, but what happens historically, I feel like, is Korea sees that there's an opportunity in implementing technology that has been implemented abroad, and then they make its Korean version of it, right? Like you said, Kakao Taxi or
mm.
things like that. But it seems like Koreans are going to be the first ones to adopt all of these technologies. And the first world also will be along with Korea to adopt these technologies, or even like the hubs of technology like Silicon Valley, I don't know, Berlin, London. These hotspots are gonna be the first people that are actually adopting, in my opinion. Yeah,
Mm, mm, mm. But
but
now the go on. Sorry.
yeah, but more basic than that though, there's a need-based adoption also that is happening in Venezuela, in Ukraine, in Russia, and these are, I guess, spikes on people adopting it, and uh, I'm really hopeful to see which countries are going to be adopting this, because of the need and how it's going to be providing much more value to them than just, I guess, currency, right?
No, absolutely. And when I say this, this is not me adopting like the Gukbong coin, but now we're talking about Korea next to Berlin, London, Silicon Valley, rather than Venezuela, Peru, with no disrespect to those countries. But do you see what I mean by that? Where Korea is now in the world, it's being associated with these highly developed and these early adaptabilities, rather than dealing with systemic corruption and stagnation, which it's kind of overcome that, I think, and that's a really good thing. Points to the future.
I'm hoping that it's the center of technology in Asia, but to be honest, to be completely fair, it seems like it's gonna be the center of the hub of technology in Asia is gonna be Singapore. Um, but I guess we can be the going with them, you know, the second in line.
What does Singapore have? I mean, Singapore famously, I might get it wrong, but has sort of, it's very multicultural, isn't it? Singapore, it has kind of four different, more ethnic or demographics in there. What does Singapore have that Korea doesn't?
Um, I think maybe diverse culture. The world's smartest people are going to, if you're in Asia, the world's smartest people are probably going to go to Singapore, right? If you're around, like, I don't know, the world, I guess, you could probably say an argument for Silicon Valley and London and these kind of spots. But the world's smartest people are going to Singapore. I'm not sure about their immigration policy and their friendliness towards foreigners, but that's definitely something that Korea could improve, so that we can increase the amount of brain power that we actually have. You know, it definitely seems like that's the way to go about how we can gather more talent. Apart from also just more education, more of the basic things that we already have constructed, right? But Singapore, definitely multiculturalism. People are, I guess, look all sorts of different ways, and it's, I guess, more like inviting. I guess there's a lot already financial hub. There's a financial hub in Singapore already, and a lot of the crypto world actually, Luna went from being based in South Korea to being based in Singapore, actually, uh, because the amount of talent that can be provided and the amount of, like, I guess, business that's already going there, it's really pulling everyone to join them, right? And that's, I feel like, the reason why it's growing much more faster, and it's I guess a more concentrated place than Korea in itself.
Also, I guess you've got the English language, which dominates a lot of Singapore business
Yeah.
and things like that, which is not always the case in Korea. And it's nice and warm in Singapore. I've taught
Yeah.
some students from.
Yeah, sorry,
Eh?
but it seems like it's the middle ground between English speaking also and Mandarin and Chinese Asian culture speaking, Asian language speaking. But yeah, definitely
Mm,
seems like that middle ground, that spot where everyone can meet.
yeah, absolutely. I've Hanyang in the international courses, especially during the summer and winter. I've taught some students from Singapore and just been blown away just by how incredibly smart they are. Sometimes, there's a lot good of stuff going on in there, and it's nice that Korea is part of that conversation. Andre, let's bring this towards, and it's been fascinating, like listening and understanding a bit more of the ground level. When this conversation closes, I want you to send me some Korean memes from the crypto on those, just so I can put them in, right? Because we need to see them. I'll edit them in. But it's been great. Just to bring this to a close, like with the same question that I've asked everyone thus far. Although we've been talking about money and digital technology, I always enjoy asking people about this very human thing about existence. And we're all here together, whether we're in Venezuela doing our crops or whether we're in Singapore wearing our shorts because it's so bloody hot. But what do we do in this life to give ourselves meaning, and how do we provide value to other people beyond ape NFTs? Andre, what's the meaning of life, mate?
I actually thought about this question really hard, and I was thinking about how to answer this for quite a bit. But
Mm,
it's really hard question. But I guess life is meaningless, and we're here to put meaning into it, and for me, I think it's living something beyond for myself, and I guess there's the need for the human nature, for the need to abide for something and live for something greater for just personal benefit.
mm,
And I don't know. I think I've seen growing up in Peru a lot of people that have not lived in the best like conditions, and the chaoticness and the suffering that goes around. But something that has stood with me while I guess early childhood, or I feel like something that has stood with most people that I've talked to, hopefully,
mm,
is that everyone has some irrefutable truths in their lives. They have certain things that they have conviction about that beyond the level of, I guess, logic, beyond the level that it can actually maybe justify. And those are the virtues that I feel like I've been confronting, that although they reshape into different ways, into different hobbies or different accomplishments or different things that I want to do, these are the virtues that I feel like I've been confronting. And although I always find it hard to actually have a like high resolution of what this actually is, I still see it as a constant thing, as the same thing for me,
mm.
and although I'm over the years, I feel like it's becoming a lot more like clear to me about this. Like the resolution is being from like almost no understanding of it to a lot more concrete idea. I still don't know if I can verbally express what this North Star for me is, and yeah, I think that's still the thing that I've been able to just go through life was this idea that I have a certain like irrefutable facts and beliefs that I have in my mind that I can make the world, I guess, a good place. Although I'm starting to sound like a beauty pageant contestant.
You look
But
like one as well, Andre.
but it seems like the only burden that I've been able to like pick up, and like the only thing that I've been being able to that the only thing that I've been able to accomplish was in alignment to that, or um, for me, I think it's also like small progressive steps towards like improving myself, so that I can later, I guess, understand and have more of a deep, meaningful, positive effect on others. I realize that I'm quite young and I really don't have I don't have to take on a lot of responsibility except for myself. But I understand that when I'm in my 40s, I'm gonna have to be responsible for not only myself but also for, I guess, hopefully, or I don't know, a family or my existing family even. And these are the things that I feel like I put meaning into my life. But yeah, I hope that everyone also has that true North Star, that like thing that they like can believe with conviction, and that they can confront, um, so that they can have meaningful meaning in their life. It, that's the only way I feel like I've been able to uh, live and keep, I guess, sanity in a sense. Uh, but and the thing that brings value, or like the thing that like grounds me also, is this belief, when I when I'm in times of trouble, I guess. But yeah, if I've talked too much about this, I'm not too sure, but I this is what I believe. Life is quite meaningless, but then there's when you go out through life, you realize that there's something that you don't know, that you can't comprehend, that you can use as a north star to guide you, and I guess guide your life. But
I'm really
that's
curious. I'm really curious how you would answer that question on the meaning of life if your friends asked you it in a bar after a loads of soju at 2 a.m. What your answer, what your answer would be then? I'm not sure you'd be talking about North Stars and be. I think just the nature of the question makes people go like, "I've got to say something profound and deep and nice." And I'm waiting for someone to say, just get messed up, man. Just get drunk, have a good time. That's all there is to it.
Sports and rock and roll.
Yeah, absolutely. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, and taxes. That's one day someone will say that to me. But no, it's really cool what you say. Let me ask you one last question. How do you say thank you in Peruvian?
Well, in Spanish, say gracias.
Okay, yeah. Is that it? That's just what they say in Peruvian. They just say gracias. That's
gracias. We have like several different languages, but okay. I am not too sure how to say it in Quechua. But most people only speak Spanish, so we say gracias.
Then, to you, Andre, for today's conversation, I say gracias.
Muchas gracias a ti también.
De nada. All right. We cut it there. All right, mate. Nice one. Nice one. Nice one.
Deconstructed.